people see it and they think that they know it by watching it. So you have a lot of people that want to get good by watching people. And you'll even hear people say stuff like, well, if you want to be the best, you have to watch the best. But they don't even have a clue of how complex it is. So they don't even know what they're looking for with those top level lifters, and what they see might not be what's actually going on if you slow it down all the way.
Yeah.
I think that our culture as a whole has an interesting relationship with exercise. So lots of times it's a very fickle thing where they want to look better, and they'll see me eating something and they'll say, well, I thought you were a trainer. I say, yeah, I'm a trainer and I enjoy food. And I can enjoy food because I work out. There's this really dysfunctional relationship people have with exercise and with food. For me, I actually don't like to train people to bodybuilding shows. I did when I first started training, but I don't do that anymore. Mainly because I want people to enjoy how their body works and what they're doing with their body, and also what they're eating. So I don't like to propagate the feast and fast sort of thing. And that it's important for bodybuilding, not that it's bad. It's just, for me, the idea that I want to get across to people is live well all the time. Weightlifting programming is all about altering load. People talk about periodization and program design a lot, and they say that you have to change your exercises all the time. It's actually not the case. You need to change load and volume, so total volume. We call volume the amount of kilos that you lift per day, so people just think about reps and sets. We just think about the amount of kilos lifted. Previous to contest, we go through loading phases. So week 1 is relatively low intensity, so not too much weight. Then week 2, there's more volume, more intensity. Week 3 is the most intensity, lower volume, so total reps. And then week 4, you kind of relax and it's high intensity, so you're testing. Previous to contest, we get about 4 to 6 weeks to relax, and we work on speed and technique, and we allow our body to recover before we get into contest and challenge it. So.
It kind of just made me too self-conscious. I was always thinking about, like, I started to obsess of how, like, what I look like, and started feeling like really guilty with my diet if I wasn't eating the way I thought I should be to be reaching my goals. So it was kind of destructive for me personally, so it just wasn't my thing. I'm way stronger, like, as a unit, like my whole body together is a lot stronger. My legs have become more like strong and are actually bigger, which I like. My back's a lot stronger, and yeah, and I get to eat more, which is nice. I think the benefits is the, like, mental fortitude that it requires. You have to be strong mentally to come in every day, and especially if you've had a, like, rough week, or if, like, school's stressing you out or something's happening at home. You have to just learn how to forget about that stuff and not let it interfere with your training sessions. A negative would probably be the same thing though. Like, it's positive, but it's also kind of a negative, is the mental side. Is that if you're not ready mentally when you come into the gym, it's a lot harder to like, lift what you wanted to lift. The biggest ones is that, like, no one knows what our sport is about. So Olympic, like, weightlifting, people think we just go to the gym and lift, and usually it's associated with, like, bodybuilding workouts, or even CrossFit now. CrossFit has really, like, made it more popular But then when somebody sees that you weightlift, they're like, oh, like you do CrossFit? And it's like, no, like they do our lifts, but we're not CrossFit. We're really far from CrossFit. So I think that's a huge thing. And like, I think people don't understand that weightlifting is still a sport and not just a lifestyle or like just something you do at the gym. So they don't understand that our diet doesn't look like a bodybuilder's diet. We don't eat like salads and turkey all day, and like we're pretty flexible with our diets for the most part, as long as we're getting like our main nutrients. Carbs are obviously essential for us, and the only time people really start cracking down on their diets is like when we're coming close to competition and people need to make weights.
I think the ability, it's an individual sport, so you're competing against yourself first and then competing against other people, and then over and above that, it's called a cult sport, where it's not a mainstream sport, but everybody in the community, the powerlifting community, works together. Even your competitors, if I go to Worlds, you know, even guys from Kazakhstan or Germany, they still want you to do well. They want to win, but they still want you to do well. It's typically secondary to other sports, where they've trained in a sport and then they hear about it and then they decide to try it out. I would imagine that, you know, 80% of my team, you know, were in another sport before they came to powerlifting. Still competing. I won the Olympia 3 years. I got bronze at the World Bench in 2012. Have about 20 national records, 2 Commonwealth records, 2 world records. They've been since beaten, but I had 2 world records. 9-time Canadian undefeated champion. That's about it. Well, for me, it's a community, and you create bonds with people. You know, some of the guys that I started with, I'm still friends with 10 years later. I know people all over the world, so it's changed me that way, where I can go probably to, you know, almost any country in the world and find a powerlifter and go train with them. So it's that nice camaraderie and community that way. But it's really a discipline. It's not like bodybuilding. It's getting stronger. So it's nice to, you know, even to go to a commercial gym and see a guy that's 3 times the size of me, and, you know, lift 120, 130 pounds more than him. So. Probably the first one is that you have to do drugs. And you have to be this huge, humongous person. We're in a drug-tested federation, so they can do random drug testing. They could come right now and ask me to do a test. I've been tested lots. The second one is that you don't have to be huge. Like, you can be big. You know, there's weight classes, so you don't have to worry about, well, I'm 120 pounds and I have to compete against somebody 180 pounds. Well, you stay with the same people in your same weight class, same age class. So it's more competitive that way. You know what, bodybuilding, and I hate to say this, they're pretty smart people. Like, they have very good diets, they train really hard, they know exactly how to train for what they want to develop, where powerlifters don't have to be as focused and detailed on 6 meals a day and making sure that they have a proper protein and carbohydrate ratio. They still have to eat healthy, but you don't have to be as focused and detailed because you're not putting on size unless you want to. But typically powerlifters aren't there to put on size, they're to get stronger. So with a healthy diet, you can still get stronger. With a bodybuilding, you can't just have a healthy diet. You have to have a different diet totally. The other thing is that bodybuilders aren't as strong as powerlifters. So you could be 3 times my size and I'm still stronger than you.
There's a number of different reasons. If you would have asked me that question 10 years ago, I would have given you strictly performance outcomes and said, well, it increases strength, it increases power, increases explosiveness, movement capabilities, flexibility. Right now, we primarily use it with our athletes. Number 1 is an injury prevention method, and then 2, if we get a performance factor out of it, then great. Different athletes benefit from Olympic lifting for different reasons. Alpine skiers, one of their biggest injuries is knees. One way to protect the knee is to work the hamstrings and the posterior chain of the body. So Olympic lifting is awesome from working, the back, the glutes, the hamstrings. So we incorporate it in that way. If they get performance out of it, which they're gonna, that's a secondary benefit. Not many injuries with weightlifting. There's going to be injuries if the technique's poor, but if someone has proper technique, really the aggravating injuries are going to be like a quadricep tendonitis, maybe a wrist aggravation. If people don't know how to drop properly, they may tweak a shoulder, but a lot of people have this conception that their backs are going to get hurt and their shoulders are going to get hurt, but very rarely do we have back or shoulder problems with people that understand the proper technique and loading principles. It's high level sport, right? So with any high level sport, drugs are involved. It's unfortunate, typically not at the developmental age or we're dealing with drugs, and it's unfortunate we have to at all, but because it's a strength sport, it is. Well, bodybuilders, the training that they do is the training they should be doing, right? So bodybuilders are probably one of the only athletes that I'm not going to put on weightlifting, concepts, because their split routines and their volumes of training that they're doing is there to just primarily promote muscle growth. Typically a weightlifter, if they come from a bodybuilding background, we want their muscles to shrink, right? For instance, I had one lifter years and years ago who came from bodybuilding background, and his biceps were too big that he couldn't even rack the bar, right? So we had to cut all biceps out of his program and wouldn't allow him to do biceps so he could get into proper rack position. But it comes down to muscle components. So a bodybuilder wants to increase the protein synthesis within the muscle, and it gets really big. Where weightlifters, we want a very explosive, very strong muscle. So we have different training principles for that. So bodybuilders should be doing the training that they're doing. They shouldn't be lifting, but weightlifters shouldn't be doing bodybuilding concepts because it'll slow their bodies down. I guess I wish people knew more about who is giving them the advice. right? If you look at our industry, I wish I could call it a profession, but we're not professionals, or not everybody in the industry is professionals. So that's the biggest thing, is that when people are seeking advice on exercise, not going to their muscle and fitness magazines, not going to their personal training gyms where people have weekend courses and are now prescribing exercise, but really seeking the people out that have a good theoretical and applied background in exercise and training. Unfortunately, the thing is, we don't have a governing body saying you can train, you can't train, but it's disheartening, the fact that you have all these young people coming out with degrees in exercise physiology, and they're competing with people that have a weekend course, right? And there's a big knowledge base difference there, and I wish people would seek out the people that had the knowledge.